Hey guys, welcome back. So I want to preface this review by saying that in the last couple of videos, I've been really I was really happy to give the first three movies that I reviewed really good grades, review movies that I really liked. And honestly, I was kind of looking to review something that I maybe wouldn't like. So I heard about this movie on Netflix called The Unforgivable, and I looked at the reviews of it, and what was interesting is that the audience reviews are very, very different from the critic reviews. And I found that interesting, and so I wanted to give it a watch and just kind of see where I fell on the spectrum of it. I don't really tend to seek out movies that I'm like gonna hate, but I figure since I have this channel, like it might be good to at least stir up a little bit of controversy. So yeah, this movie's called The Unforgivables, and it stars Sandra Bullock, and she plays a woman who recently got out of prison for a murder that she committed 20 years ago, and she's sort of trying to put her life back together. And the movie's sort of about the way she's treated in society, but also her goal to reunite with her sister, who was really young back when she committed the murder. Now, as far as positives go, I can definitely see what a lot of audience members saw in this movie. Sandra Bullock is really, really good in the film. There's this one scene in particular where she's reacting to something that really frustrates her, and she basically destroys this room and starts hammering against this drywall, which was really, really effective. But to me, it's never really going to measure up against the greatest room-destroying scene of all time. And here it is. I love The Room so goddamn much. I'm going to review it one day, and it's going to be legendary. I also thought the direction in this movie was pretty good. I wouldn't say it's one of the best directed movies of the year or anything, but there are a lot of shots that really stuck out to me as quite impressive. There's this one shot towards the end of the movie where Sandra Bullock's character is walking away from a diner where she just had a confrontation with John Bernthal's character, and the camera is essentially following her while she's walking down this path, and she's crying, just kind of slowly breaking down. It was pretty effective. I enjoyed that shot especially. The cinematography doesn't stand out that much. It does a good job of portraying a really gloomy world. I think this takes place in Seattle, so it's very rainy, very kind of gray colors for the most part. There's also a twist in the middle of the movie that I thought made the movie a lot more interesting. Made me quite a bit more invested in how the story ended up playing out. But unfortunately, that's really all the positives I have to say about this movie. I really didn't like this movie that much. Biggest reason by far comes down to the script and just the writing in general. There's kind of a couple parts to this, one of which is the dialogue. The dialogue just often feels very cheesy and obvious. So characters pretty much say exactly what they feel to each other. So for example, there's a scene where the son of the cop that Sandra Bullock's character killed years ago meets Sandra Bullock's character, and when he's talking to her, there's not really any subtext. There's nothing going on that he's like clearly hiding. That the audience knows that we as the audience know that he feels, but it's sort of hidden. It's not hidden at all. He pretty much directly says how he feels to this character, which is really not the best way of storytelling. You should leave the audience a little bit of something to figure out on their own. There are also a couple characters in this movie that really just don't have a lot to do. One of those would be John Bernthal's character, who is really, really good when he's on screen. I wanted to see a lot more from him. He has this great scene at the diner where he learns something about Sandra Bullock's character, and we later find out he can relate to her story. But his character is just so underwritten, and there's not really anything he has to do in the film other than occasionally talk to the main character. Another really great actress that's in this movie, Viola Davis, has basically nothing to do except occasionally be angry. Speaking of anger, they've really written this film in a very monotonous, one-note type of way. This movie is just fucking angry. It's very angry, it's very depressing, and there's not really any break from it, unfortunately. There's nothing wrong with having a depressing movie. I saw a lot of the audience reviews just talking about how this movie is just very, very depressing. And that in itself, I don't think is a bad thing. A lot of my favorite movies are very depressing. But I think that this movie really missed on how to do it right, because there's not really a break from any of this really sad, angry sort of redemption story that we get. It's just kind of that one note the whole time. Compare this to, say, some David Fincher movies, which are also very depressing. But if you take a movie like Seven, Zodiac, Gone Girl, those movies all, yes, they're depressing and they deal with very dark themes, but they also have a lot of moments of humor and lightheartedness sprinkled in between those that really kind of serves to keep the audience invested in the story while not being just hit too hard over the head with this dreary note that they're trying to play. This movie completely misses that. Another huge issue with this movie is the lack of characterization in the writing. We don't really learn a lot about the characters' motivations. In particular, the sons of the cop that Sandra Bullock's character killed years ago. One of the sons ends up doing something later in the movie that is very drastic and violent in a way. But other than the obvious idea that he wants revenge against this person, there's never it's never really explained why exactly he's willing to commit violence against an innocent person that he never actually knew. The innocent person being somebody other than, of course, Sandra Bullock's character. It seemed like if they wanted to do this kind of revenge plot with him, it would have been better for him to just, want to go after Sandra Bullock's character specifically. What they actually did with it really didn't make a lot of sense because they just didn't explain it that well. There's also a scene early on in this movie where they're trying to do characterization, or at least backstory for Sandra Bullock's character. In this scene, she needs to look up the adoption records of her sister to try and find her. But instead of actually taking the time to construct an interesting scene for this, they just have her go to a library and Google it, and the camera cuts right to the screen and just shows exactly what she's looking at. It's a very obvious way of telling the audience what we should be looking for here. It's just so lazy. It reminded the scene in fucking Twilight where Bella suspects that Edward is a vampire, so she just Googles shit about vampires. It's like, what the fuck, movie? Can you not think of a better way to explain this? Overall, I think that the reason why I didn't really like this movie was because I just found it really disappointing once I really kind of got into the story. Because there is a good movie here. This story is pretty compelling. The idea that a woman gets out of prison and she needs to reunite with her long-lost sister, but she's having trouble doing that because of the way society treats her. It's a good idea, and there is a good script you could come up with for this. I just don't think they did it, and I don't think they really had enough time in this 2-hour movie format to condense all of these different plot points that they were trying to go through together. It didn't really work for me at all. I talked about the positives at the beginning of this video, so I don't hate this movie necessarily, but I wouldn't really say it's worth your time either. I'm going to give it a C-. But if you're interested in the controversy of the Rotten Tomatoes audience versus critics score, maybe check it out. So yeah, that's my review for Netflix's The Unforgivable. If you like my reviews, go ahead and subscribe down below and like this video. I have a few more videos in the coming weeks that should be really fun. Please stay tuned for that. And I will see you guys in the next video.